Welcome everybody, I'm Laura Hsu. Welcome to this webinar on the Lightroom 4 new beta features. With me I have John, who will be moderating questions and helping to work through any issues that might arise. So my goal in this session is to show you the new features and the basics on how to use them. I could easily spend 3 or 4 hours going into the nitty-gritty details of how to use them, but I'm going to try to resist that. Of course, once the official version of Lightroom 4 comes out, I do plan to release the Lightroom 4 version of my DVD video series, Lightroom Fundamentals and Beyond, and also another DVD on Lightroom's output modules. Now, I'm not going to try to turn this 90-minute session into a sales pitch, but I do want to address just one question that's been coming up a lot this week from people that own my DVD or who have been thinking of buying it, the Lightroom 3 version that is. And that is, things change so much with Lightroom 4 that it's a waste of money. And the answer is no. The only thing that you're learning in the Lightroom 3 version that really has changed are the basic panel controls in the Develop module. I'm going to go over those tonight, and there's also a video on my website that explains how those have changed. So if you bought the DVD, rest assured, everything you've learned is relevant and necessary. And if you haven't, frankly, the DVD is discounted now on my website because we're getting ready for Lightroom 4, so it's a great time to buy it. Okay, enough about the DVD. Raise your hands if you plan to or already have downloaded the beta. Looks like the numbers are changing here, the statistics are not, so about 30% of you are. So I assume the rest of you are just curious about what's coming out with Lightroom 4. Now for those of you that have the beta, a word of advice, and that is, of course, it's a beta, but it's not stable. You will have crashes, you will have bugs, you will have inexplicable things that happen. So it's just, par for the course when you're trying a beta. Sometimes, frankly, when I can't figure out why things aren't working, I just close the program and reopen it, and often that fixes things just fine. Okay, I want you to type in the top feature that's on your mind for covering tonight, and just use a couple words, but it's going to give me very quickly, in probably 15 seconds, a sense of what's on people's minds tonight. It's actually kind of interesting to me. What I'm not seeing so far is the map module. Okay, someone just, I think it was Bruce, just typed in the map module. So I'm gonna cover everything that you guys are talking about, but it's good for me to get a sense, so thank you. The order I'm going to cover things in is Develop, Map, Book, Video, DNG changes, and then miscellaneous. I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the Develop module changes. Let me switch back to the Lightroom screen. Okay, I'm in the Library module. Let me go ahead and select a collection of photographs here and go to the Develop module. And I'm going to start with this photograph here. I'm going to cover the new basic panel controls. They're very powerful. It's kind of a different way of thinking. It's taken me a little bit of time to get used to things because I just had such a set way of doing things in terms of workflow. So you've got exposure contrast, which may look familiar to you. You've got highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. There's no recovery and fill light. You've got these new 4 controls. Now exposure actually has changed. Exposure used to be set exposure for the brightest tones in the photo, the white point. Exposure now is the mid-tones. And it's important, at least to start top down. So I'm going to set exposure for the overall brightness of the photo, the midtones in the photo. So I may be looking in here, but I'm not worried about how bright the brightest tones are getting. I don't even care if those bright tones are getting blown out. I would be fine with that. So exposure for midtones, and then I'm going to go ahead and add some contrast because I tend to like things a little punchier. Actually, I'm going to jump up to white balance, which is not changed, but I'm just going to warm up the photo a little bit. Let me collapse this so you can see the photo bigger. Okay, midtones, contrast. Now I'm going to say how bright do I want the highlights in the photo. They're a little bright out here, so I'm going to dampen those down a little bit. And then I need to get some light in the shadows. This is a black blob up here. So I'm going to increase shadows, and look how nicely it isolates the shadows in the photo. It isolates them much better than fill light. Fill light's definition of shadows was pretty broad. I loved it, but it was too broad. Whites controls the white point. So if at this point I feel like the brightest tones in the photo were not bright enough or too bright, I would use whites to dampen it down. But I don't go down to whites and blacks as much as I used to. And then blacks controls the black point. Any questions at this point, John?
I have one question for you from Douglas. He asks, does the plus minus on exposure still equate to stops?
Yes, it does. It does still equate to stops. Actually, I'm going to hit the reset button and show you one thing. Notice how the defaults now are all 0. So it didn't used to make sense to people why the default on brightness was 50 and contrast of 25, blacks was 0. So they've been recalibrated to all be 0. So that's kind of cool. And all of them, when you slide them to the right, they get brighter. So it used to be blacks was the opposite of that. So I'm going to go down to clarity here. Now clarity works just as before. It adds some three-dimensionality. It makes the photo appear sharper. It's a refined algorithm, which in a lot of ways is better. It doesn't produce ugly halos along the sides of things. I'm just going to jump very quickly here and show you. First, I'm going to come down to the camera calibration panel, set the process version back to the old way of doing things, 2010, and I'm going to increase clarity. Watch the side of this building here. You see that ugly shadow that appeared there? So that's the old clarity. Now, if I click on the exclamation point to say now I want to update to the new way of doing things, and I do clarity, so that's 0 and that's 100. So it's definitely improved. Sometimes clarity now tends to make things really bright, which I think is something they still need to continue to refine. That's the basics panel. Now again, the idea is top down and set exposure first for the midtones. If you don't do that first, or if you set that for the white point, you're going to find that you're very unsatisfied with what you get out of the rest of the sliders. So let me go ahead and go to the next change, which are new local adjustment tools. And I'm going to start with this photo here. This photo, I'm going to go ahead and set the overall white balance on this photo. I know this baseboard is white, so I'm using the eyedropper. That's not new to Lightroom 4. I've set the overall white balance, but you know what? I forgot to turn the light off in the hallway here. So I'm going to now go into the adjustment brush, and you're going to see that we now have local temperature and tint controls. So I'm just thrilled with this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take the temperature away from yellow towards blue. Now normally I would zoom in on this. I'm going to use auto mask to try not to spill out, but I'm just going to do this quickly. And I'm basically going to change the white balance out in the hallway. Now once is not enough, it's not strong enough, so I'll hit new and I'll do it again. And of course I'm spilling over very sloppily. Now to be honest with you, no matter how many times I hit new on this example, I can't get rid of all of the light in that hallway. Those sliders are not strong enough. But Eric Chen is still working on this algorithm, and by the time the official version comes out, it will be able to handle these strong mixed lighting conditions. Any questions, John?
Tony says, so what you're saying is that the shadows and white spaces replace the recovery slider?
Highlights is for recovering blown out highlights and for dampening down highlights. So that replaces recovery. Shadows replaces fill light.
Sunny asks, will a return still give you a new adjustment?
Yeah, actually it will. That's a little secret I didn't even know myself. Let me go ahead and go to a different photo here. And but just imagine with local white balance, when you're shooting people and you've got multiple people in the photograph, you get the overall white balance, but one of the people still is a little too green or a little too pale. With local white balance, you just got so much more control. Also in the adjustment brush, we have more tonal controls. We didn't have fill light and recovery or whites or blacks in Lightroom 3. We still don't have whites or blacks, but we've got highlights or shadows. So, for example, let me reset this guy. If we want to dampen down the front of the dog's head here, I can just go with negative highlights, and I can actually, I'll turn off auto mask now, I can paint very sloppily, because if I spill over into the shadows, highlights is not going to affect that anyway. Of course, if I want to bring some light into the shadows, I'll do a new adjustment, and I'll paint in here to add some light locally into the shadows. So people say, well, I still go to Photoshop because Photoshop has layers and masks. Well, this panel has become so powerful that unless you need sophisticated selections, it certainly meets my needs. The next two things, noise and moire, so we can fix noise locally. I have a photo that doesn't have any noise, but it's got something that I love to use noise reduction on, and that's reducing detail in faces. This is actually me, it's cropped in. And John Cornicello, who shot this, has the best camera and lens in the world, and it shows every little fine hair on my face. So what I'm going to do is go into the adjustment brush and go with positive noise reduction, and I'm just going to paint some of that detail away. And of course I can be as aggressive about it, give myself a makeup job and as I want, or I can be subtle. But certainly for local noise, you fix your overall noise problem with the global sliders, but particular areas still have stronger issues like shadows that you've brightened up. You'll have local noise control. Now moire, here's a photo here with moire. It's this pattern. Now this pattern is here because I photographed this through a screen door with my iPhone. I'm going to go ahead and use positive moire, and I'm going to click and drag, and it's gone. Now this was an extreme example. It took 100 to really get rid of it. Here's a more, let me get rid of this pin here. It's already been fixed. Let me zoom in a little bit more for you here. See this red, yellow, and blue pattern? Again, I photographed something that had a line pattern in it, and a digital capture can do that. So I'll simply go with positive moire, and I'll click and drag, and when I let go of the mouse, it's gone. So I worked this photograph for a client, and I had to take it into Photoshop to fix that. So it doesn't happen a lot, but I'm thrilled with that. That's the adjustment brush. Now everything I've said about the adjustment brush also applies to the graduated filter. It's got the same new choices in there. So I happened to glance over to Steve's question, is there anything like a healing tool? That's the spot removal tool, and that's in Lightroom 3, so I won't be going over that. No improvements in that at this point, but I've got to believe that at some point in the future they're going to come, because obviously Adobe gets a lot of feedback on needing more functionality there. I'm sorry, John, were there any other questions on the adjustment brush changes?
No other questions.
So I'm going to go ahead next and go down to the tone curve. Now, if you're a curves user, I'm going to go to this photo here. The way most people are used to using the tone curve are with the sliders to brighten up particular ranges of tones in the photograph. Shoot, I'm going to go ahead and hit the exclamation point, update this photo. Okay, so most people are used to the sliders. Some people know that this little symbol takes them to a point curve where they can click and drag points on the curve. So I could spend hours talking about curves and how they're used. I'm sorry, just a little glitch here, which will be fixed right there. Okay, now what we have is not only RGB, which controls brightness and darkness, but we also have individual colors in here. So again, if you're an expert curves user, I think you're really going to love that you have this here in Lightroom now. So let's say that in this photo, I want to warm up the side of this piece of furniture. It's a little too blue, a little too cool for me. Makes sense, it's in the shadows. So I'm simply going to put a point on the curve, drag, not up, that would make things more blue, but I'm going to drag down to move from blue towards yellow, and then I'm going to drag other points up to anchor the midtones and the brighter tones so that I'm only affecting the shadows. Now, if I click on the switch to turn this on and off, you can see that yes, in fact, I've only warmed up the shadows. So you can shift colors on an individual basis for various tones in your images, shadows, midtones, highlights, etc. Very cool for those that want that level of control. Questions on that, John?
No questions for you at this moment.
Okay, let's move to the last change in the develop module. I'm sorry, the last one before the big one. I'm sorry. Automatic chromatic aberration fix. So if you know what chromatic aberration is, if you have a lens that produces these color fringes along the edges, this used to be fixed in the lens corrections panel using the automated profile or using manual sliders. But the fix has been taken out of the profile. You can see it's not here. The sliders are no longer there. They're no longer in the manual tab. But you have an automatic remove chromatic aberration checkbox here. Click it and it's gone. To me, this works great. It works better than my profile ever did. It works better than I could get the sliders to work. So whatever they did, it seems to be very, very good. So now I want to go to the other major change in the develop module, and that's called soft proofing. So if you print using profiles or you export your photos as JPEGs to the sRGB color space, that's what JPEGs by default export to, it can't handle really saturated colors. The colors have to be muted down. So it sure would be handy if we could get a preview of what's going to happen to our photograph before we actually print it or export it. I mean, one of the most common problems on forums is, why as I export my photos as JPEGs are they so washed out? Well, this is going to help you understand why that is and allow you to adjust for it if necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this soft proofing checkbox here in the Develop module. And you probably saw, I'm going to turn this off for a sec. And I'm going to choose my printer profile, so we'll cover printing first. I can choose one of the profiles that's there, or I can go to Other and look in this is basically my system profile folder that comes up, and I could put more in the list by just hitting the check mark. So in this case, let's say that I want to print this on Epson Enhanced Matte paper. I'm using my profiles. Sorry, I don't have time to explain printing with profiles. And now if I hit the check mark on and off, you can see that yes, some of those really richly saturated colors in fact get dampened down. Rendering intents control how things get dampened down, how things get brought into range. So I can now experiment here with the two rendering intents to see which version of bringing things into Gamut or into the range that the printer can print looks better to me. I also have some Gamut warnings up here. So this one in the top right is showing me what's out of range of my printer profile. Most of the photo, right? Everything turned red. This one on the left shows me what's out of the range of my monitor gamut. Colors that are too saturated for my monitor to display. A lot of the oranges in here. Now, of course, it's not that you don't see those oranges on my monitor, it's just that they get dampened down. So the gamut warnings are great to have as well. Simulate paper and ink. Some people use this for printing, some don't. But paper whites are not as bright as monitor whites, and the paper may be a different color. So you can check that to get a sense of what that effect may be. You can also right-click in the gray here and say, I don't want to see this against 50% gray. I want to see it against paper white because that's what my mat's going to look like when I print it out. So lots of options here. It's taken a long time for the Lightroom team to build this, I think because it's very complicated to build, but I love the solution. You know, it's a very elegant and easy to use solution. Now let's say you have a photo, we'll go back to this photo here. It becomes washed out, so I want to add contrast. So I'm going to come add some more, and immediately I get this warning, not a warning, but a dialog that says, do I want to create a virtual copy for the soft proofing? So if any further adjustments that I'm making are just for printing or just for a particular output purpose, I may want to do those on a separate proof copy, a separate virtual copy. So I can do that, or I can make this main version of my photo the proof. So anytime you start to make adjustments, you'll get asked that. And then if you do make a proof copy, it actually, in the copy name field in the metadata, it remembers the profile and the rendering intent. So next time you come back to print it, you'll know what the heck you used the first time. Any questions on soft proofing?
A couple comments on soft proofing. Should you have a paper white background for soft proofing? And Tony says that he didn't follow the last part of the soft proof, the part about choosing which white to use.
Okay, that depends on what you're soft proofing for. If you're soft proofing for print and it's going to go against a white matte, I think it's appropriate to choose a paper white. If you're soft proofing because something's going to go on the web, or and I'm going to get to that little example, then I would just leave it against 50% gray.
Black and white soft proof?
I don't think, you know, for example, image print profiles, I know you can soft proof the color ones, but I don't think you can soft proof the black and white ones. You certainly can't soft proof Epson's advanced black and white printing because that's outside of Lightroom, that's in the printer driver.
Can you adjust the snowman in soft proof?
Yeah, so now that it's in soft proof, I can go ahead and adjust it. The first adjustment I did, it asked me if I wanted to do the adjustments on a virtual copy, but I can continue to work in soft proof mode. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is that if you're exporting JPEGs to send out, let's go back to my extreme example, for monitor use of any kind, web or email and stuff like that, you're emailing in the sRGB color space. Now, what's unfortunate right now is that as I hit the check mark on and off, nothing's happening to my photo. And I know full well that sRGB cannot represent these saturated colors. So there's still a bug in here. It's been filed and the Lightroom team is working on it. So right now you can't soft proof sRGB or Adobe RGB, but you can soft proof printer profiles. Any last questions? I've got to move on to the map module. Okay, let me go ahead and go to the map module. I realized I saw less interest in maps, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I'm certainly going to cover it. The map module is used to find your photos. If they're displayed on the map, it's easy to find photos based on location and also to select photos based on location. Now, my map is refreshing very slow because unfortunately I have a very bad internet connection. In the map style here, I have it set on hybrid, which shows me the satellite view and road map view from Google Maps. So you have different choices here. I'm going to go to light, which is simply a graphic representation, and I'm doing that because I'm hoping that it's going to display faster here. Maybe it's because I did so many zooms, and if it doesn't, then we'll do book first while it tries to catch up with me. Okay, here it comes. So the map module is used for viewing your photos on a map, finding them, and selecting them. So I'm not seeing any photos here on the map, and that's because I'm in a collection of only 15 photos, and they don't have latitude and longitude assigned to them. But if instead I go to all photographs, okay, so now I'm seeing some photos come up. These photos have latitude and longitude assigned. My iPhone assigns latitude and longitude, and the others I've dragged onto the map. My SLR doesn't assign it at this point. Maybe my next SLR. Okay, so I have 121 photos in the Chicago area. If I click on this pin, I can scroll through the photos. So that's kind of cool to be able to see what I've got in that location, maybe show my friends or clients in this way. Notice also that when I clicked on this pin, those 121 photos became selected in the film strip. So maybe I'm selecting them because I want to go to the library module and add some keywords, or I want to go to the slideshow and do an Evanston, Illinois slideshow. Or I can expand the metadata panel in the map module and I can type in the location information. At this point, the beta does not have reverse geocoding, so it won't fill in location information based on GPS information. I would assume that at some point in the future, it should get that functionality. So that's just simply viewing photos on the map. Let's look at how you would actually assign photographs. Sometimes you don't have a camera that adds the information. This map module could still be useful to you. So I'm going to come up to search here, and I'm going to search for Seaside, Oregon, because I'm going to assign some photos on the West Coast here. Now this little pin with the dot just means that that's what I searched for. Now I can just turn off the search so that isn't distracting me. And I'm going to go to a collection of Oregon coast photos and I'm going to assign them. Now I'm just clicking and dragging on the map to move along, and I've got a navigation panel that shows me where I am, and I can adjust the rectangle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all these photographs from the Peter Iredale shipwreck at Fort Stevens State Park. I'm going to click inside one of the thumbnails, and I'm just going to drag it up here to the park. Now I can be as precise or imprecise as I want. I could be zoomed way out and just drag them to the state of Oregon if I wanted to. But for each one of these photographs, I'll just select one. It now has GPS information assigned to it. Okay, I'll take these 4 here, and I'm going to click and drag down to the Seaside Beach, click and drag these up. Now I actually want to place these, 2 of these are not quite in the same location. I'm going to double click on this pin to get a little bit closer, and I want to actually move these 2 of those 4. So I'm just simply going to come back to the film strip, grab those 2, and drag them somewhere else, and you're going to see that those 2 are taken out of that other pin. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, and you can see that I have, further out I zoom, the more aggregated these become. So the 26 and the 4 will ultimately get to 30 being grouped together. But I just double click to zoom in when I want to. Any questions at this point, John?
I have one question for you from Sam. Can mapinfo added in Lightroom 4 find its way to Flickr's map?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. It will have GPS location in the metadata, but I don't know. I did glance over and saw, is the map of the entire world? Yes. Here's my United States-centric view of the world. Here's the entire map. And if I go to all photographs, you'll see that there's one photograph in New Zealand. It should come up. Oh, here it is. It's not my photograph, but it does work with the whole world. Okay, I want to show you one more thing that's kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and go to this series of photographs I took around a neighborhood here in Seattle, and I want to assign location but my SLR doesn't have location. What I've done is I have used a GPS device to record a track log. It just records where I am at every 10 seconds along my walk. Now, honestly, I don't have a GPS device, but I have an iPhone. You can download an app that will record a track log. I have GPS tracks. There are other ones out there. They're also out there for the Android and probably other smartphones as well. So I'm going to click on this little symbol here, and I'm going to say Load Track Log. I'm going to choose the one that I downloaded from my phone. Really, I just emailed it to myself. And here it is. I swear, even though there are a lot of bars along this street, that I wasn't drinking when I recorded this track log. Now I have my photographs. I'm going to click and select them all, and I'm going to click on this little symbol. Now I need to adjust the time zone a little bit because I'm still off by an hour on my camera. The photos start an hour after the track log. So I'm simply going to adjust the track log by an hour. And now here's the really hard part. I'm going to click on the symbol again. Don't blink when I do this. I'm going to select Auto Tag 16 Selected Photos, and there they are. And some of these I can double click and zoom in on more, and you can see the precise locations here. So if you have something to record a track log, and if you care about assigning exact location to your photographs, then that's a cool option to do it. It's also just, even if you don't care about precise location, the automated way in which it does it, can be very convenient. Any other questions at this point?
I have no questions for you at this point.
Okay, great. Now I want to just show you, for those that actually are using the beta, one little detail here. See how this one has this little point on it? The symbol has a point. That means this photo is in that exact location. This one that and no number means 1. Why they don't put a 1 there, I'm not sure. A tag here with no little handle on the bottom means these two photos are in that general vicinity, but I have to double click on them to see exactly where the two are. So now I see the little anchor on the bottom there. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you, let's go back to the library module. Photos that have GPS assigned now have this new badge saying the photo has GPS data. If you click on it, regardless of where you are in Lightroom, it will jump you to that point on the map. It's just a handy way to get there. Douglas says, wow, the map module is cool. Yeah, it's one that I thought, well, I'm never going to use that. I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on map here, and I'm going to uncheck it so I never see it again. But frankly, now that I've explored it more and I understand its potential, I am going to use it. What I'm going to do is just folder by folder, I have folders for each of my shoots. I'm just going to drag those folders of images, select each folder of images, and drag them to the general location on the map so that my map becomes filled out and so that I can find my photos easier, find my Oregon coast photos easier. Did any other questions come in before we go to book?
A couple questions from Bruce. Can you make a print of the map with the location pins shown?
There's no direct way to do this, so it would just be the screen print functionality on your computer.
Peter asks, why the different point colors?
Okay, so if I zoom in here a little bit, sorry, let me go to all photographs so that I have more pins on the map. Got yellow and orange. Yellow means that these are the selected ones. This is what I clicked on last, so they're selected in the film strip. Orange means they're not selected. You can always go up to View, Show Map Key to get an explanation of what the pins are for. Okay, so let's go on to the book module. So the book module allows you to make blurb books and also create PDFs. So I'm in the library module. I'm just going to select a series of photographs. I'm going to go to the book module. Now I would say right now it's blurb books. I have no inside information on this, but I assume that in the future they'll have other printing services in here and other formats that you can print to. But in the top right here right now I've got blurb and PDF. When I choose blurb, it asks me the blurb questions on size and paper type. And what's nice is it gives you the price here. Learn more just means it jumps to the website. So when I come into here, it may have auto-filled the book, or it may be remembering what I did last, which is what's happening here. So I'm just going to clear the layout, and I'm going to make the thumbnails smaller here so you can see more. I can let Lightroom start the process for me if I want. I can click the Auto Layout button here, and it will just use the order that the photos are in. So you may want to arrange them ahead of time. and it will create a first stab at a book for me. Now it's using a preset that's, and in this case it's left page blank, right one photo. There are other canned presets that Lightroom has in here, and you can actually create your own presets as well. If you want, you know, a better mix of types of layouts in your autofill solution. But you don't have to start with autofill. You can clear a layout and just start from scratch. The first thing I'm going to do is change the cover format. Every little gray square with a plus in it is where a photo goes. So this has got a photo filling the front, a photo filling the back. So I'm simply going to click on this little down arrow, and I'm going to choose a different cover format. So there are lots of choices in here. I'll choose this one. Well, actually, let me show you that again. It's got a photo in the center, and then these lines mean that the format allows text. So anywhere you see those lines. Now I'm just going to drag a photo from the film strip and drop it in there. I'm going to do that with the back cover as well. Drop one in there. Now right now it's zooming to fill, and it's cropping off part of my photo. If I click in there, I can zoom out all the way. I can also right click and just say zoom to fit. I'm going to go to spread view here rather than grid view, so you can see these a little bit bigger. Get rid of that. Okay. Now my preferences, and preferences are located here in book preferences, are set to fill the text with caption data that I've entered in the metadata panel in the library module. I don't want that here. I think I'm going to put by Laura Shu down here, and I'm going to put my abstract book here. I'm going to select the text, and I'm going to scroll down on the right hand side here to the type panel and work on the size of the text to start with. Now the key is nothing will work in the type panel if you don't have any text selected. It won't know what to work on. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. I don't want it left justified, I want it center justified, so I'm going to click that. And I could change the color by clicking in this square and, you know, going with a different color. Now I think the default in the type panel is that this character part is collapsed, so you don't realize that you've got a ton of options in here. So I would do the same thing down here. Maybe I'll right justify that, make it a little bigger, and I want to move it down within the cell a little bit. So I'm going to go up to this cell section. Again, this comes collapsed. It fooled me. I didn't realize there was so much functionality. Click on that triangle, unlink these so that I can just slide the top down to give it a little bit more padding. So you have a lot of controls over type. Change the font, change the spacing between lines, between words, etc. Okay, so that's the front cover. Over here I could go ahead and paste in more text. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this text and I'm just going to paste a whole bunch of it in here. I'm just going to go out to the web and get some Latin, but I know you don't want to wait for that. So this little symbol here means I have too much text, so I have to reduce the font or I have to take some of it out. I'll take some of it out. But let's say I actually wanted this in 2 columns. I would simply select the text and increase this to 2 columns, and the gutter controls the spacing. So I'm really happy with the sophistication of controls in here. Is it as good as InDesign? Well, of course not, but it's a great start. Okay, so we've got the cover. Let me go ahead and add a new page. First I'm going to go back to grid view here. It starts with a first page. So I'm happy with a photo filling the page, so I'll go ahead and choose this photo to fill the page. And then I'll go to page 2 and I'm going to change the page format. Now there's tons and tons of page formats to explore in here. It's really kind of cool. I mean, if I go with 3 photo formats, you can see that I don't know quite how well this is scrolling. It's scrolling pretty well on your screen, I think, for most people. That there's just tons of formats of just photos and photos with text in here. So I'll go ahead and just choose this 3 format, click and drag photos up. And it's, you know, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to produce an attractive book in this section. And then I'll click out here to get away from that. Now, if I want to replace the photo, no problem. I'll just click and drag a new one on top of it. And let me go ahead and get one more page created. This is the back cover, so I need a new page. I'm going to come over to the page panel, and I'm going to say Add Page. And by default, it's the same kind, but instead, let's go with a let's just go with a 1 photo page. But this time, let's go back to 1 photo. I'm just going to make it a smaller photo on the page. And I'll drag a photo up into here. You can also rearrange pages. So if I want this one page to be over here, I'll just click and drag it. The key is you have to click and drag from the orange here, not from in a photo. You can also go to single page view so that you can see things with more detail, and you could turn your guides off over here so that you know exactly what will print. Okay, let me go back to grid view and show you some background options that you have. Any questions at this point, John?
Well, Melissa is so digging the book feature. Tony says, God bless you. I'm not sure when that came in, but God bless you. If I can. And Peter asks, can you print pages to file or JPEGs?
You can print to PDF. There's no option here to print to JPEG. Now, I might as well say, since some of you guys are really digging this, that you need to I would decide here, what's your final output, blurb or PDF? If it's blurb, you're going to do a proof PDF by clicking right here, export book to PDF. If your final output is a PDF, then you're going to choose PDF up here, and then it gives you options on compression quality and profiles and resolution. And that's based on, of course, is it just going to screen, or are you just sharing it with somebody by email, or are you sending it to somebody else to print, in which case they'll tell you how to set those settings. But I don't, I just want to try one little shortcut here that sometimes works. Yeah, there's no option to print to JPEG though. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you that's kind of cool is you can change background colors. So you could change the background of every single page. This says apply background globally, and it's checked. So if I change the background color here, I've changed every single page. So I'm going to do a Control or Command Z to undo that. If I uncheck it and I select a page, let's select this page, and I change the background color, I can do that for just one photo. So you could have a whole rainbow of background colors on your book. I hope you have more taste than I do here. So you can have background colors. You can also have background photos. Let's drag this photo not into the page, but into this background, and you'll see that I now have a background photo on my page. If I had checked Apply Background locally, it would apply everywhere. I mean, on all the pages. You can also, they have some graphics built in. So rather than a photo, right now, I can imagine this list expanding greatly, but they have some travel graphics that can be your backgrounds. They also have some wedding graphics. Not too many, but again, I would imagine people are going to be creating these backgrounds and selling them on the web or giving them away for free. So when I increase the opacity, so you could have a different one on each page, or you could have the same one on every page. I started working on a DVD series for the Lightroom 4 beta, and then I decided that it wasn't worth doing it just for the beta. But I definitely had over an hour, probably an hour and a half on just the book module. So there's a lot of little details in here. But what I have to say for those of you that are going to try it, if things aren't working, make sure you have the right things selected. If you're trying to affect a photo, make sure you select a photo, or make sure you select text, or that you select the page, or things are not going to work. If you want to select multiple things, it's click, shift, click. There's no click, control click to select in here. It's all done by shifting. So I clicked on this one and then I shift click on this one just to get those two. So that's kind of odd to me. So the last thing I want to show you is the most important thing, and I think this is really worth listening to. This button up here, Create Saved Book. And even if you don't do books, because I'm going to tell you how else this applies, if I'm serious about this book, meaning I just want to be able to get back to it tomorrow, I'm going to say Create Saved Book. And I'm going to give it a name, my webinar book. Now this is going to appear in the collections panel. So that's what it means by placement here. I could nest it inside of a collection set or a collection, or I can just put it straight next to the collection I'm in. I'm going to say Create, and it appears here in the collections panel with a special book symbol. It saves the combination of layout and photographs together as this special kind of collection. So that's the part that's probably fairly obvious to you once you know it shows up here. But here's the part that you really need to listen to. Let's say I've saved my book, and now I'm just going to fool around. I'm going to I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change the background colors to purple, and I'm going to just do all kinds of weird things to see what the module will do. And then I'm just going to, well, I'm exhausted by playing around, that I'm going to close Lightroom and come back tomorrow. What's going to happen when I close Lightroom and come back tomorrow is I'm going to click on my webinar book here, and it's going to look like this. It's not going to look like what it did when I saved it, because once you create a book, a saved book, it records everything you do from that point. It saves everything you do from that point. It's a different way of thinking about saving. So you really need to think, okay, here's my book. I think I'm okay with it, but I want to fool around. The solution is you need to right-click on the book and say duplicate book, and then work on the copy to do some more fooling around. Kind of like taking a snapshot, but it's a separate book creation or collection. You can also right-click and say rename, and you can also delete once you're done, with the versions that were just fooling around. And don't be alarmed that it says it's 19 photos. You're not deleting the photos, you're just deleting the book. Now, the reason I say that that's important for everybody to listen to is that that's how Slideshow Print and Web work now as well. They also have a create saved print, create saved slideshow, create saved web. So if I create this particular print layout I really like and I save it, it's also going to show up in the collections panel, but if I start fooling around, I'm ruining it. So I need to either create a duplicate or make sure I click somewhere else before I start fooling around. Questions on that?
A number of people are really liking the book section. Can save as a book to create versions? From Douglas. I'm not sure if that was a question or a comment.
If you want different versions, you're going to create new saved books, basically. So here I am on my old book. It doesn't have a create book up here to allow me to save another version. I'll just right-click and duplicate it, or I'll just go back to the collection that I was in. So I'm away from the saved book. I'm back to the collection, and then I can create another saved book. That's another way to not ruin the original.
Martha asks, so you can only work on one book in any given session?
So I can finish up with this book, and then I could go to the library module, get another folder of photos, or just go to another collection of photos here, start working on a second book, save that. Just make sure when you're ready to work on your second book that you're don't still have this first one highlighted there.
2 more questions for you if you have time. Can Lightroom 3 print templates still be used?
So any templates you have in any of the output modules are still valid. The difference between a creation, one of these saved print books, slideshows, and webs, that saves the combination of the photographs and the layout. Templates in any of the modules except for book save just the layouts. So sometimes I'll just save the layout without the photos so that I can use that layout again later. That functionality doesn't go away. But for people that want to be able to save their photos, their whole design together, that's what this saved creations logic is for. Okay, so let's go on to video now, video support. If you didn't know it, Lightroom 3 already supported video to some extent. You could import your videos just like your photographs. You could rate them, flag them, keyword them, basically add metadata, do the organizational tasks in the library module. But you couldn't edit them, you couldn't develop them, you couldn't export them with changes. So Lightroom 4, they've added these abilities. They've also added support for AV-CHD video format, which is the format that Sony uses, and also many of the new mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. So right now, I think it's safe to say that Lightroom supports most, if not all, of our camera video formats. So basically, I have some videos here that really are just MP4s from my video series, my DVD series. They're MP4s, Lightroom supports them. And then I have a video from my, I'm going to delete this JPEG here because it's going to confuse us. Then I have this video shot with my iPhone. So this is the one we're going to use. It's the typical, got to show my family the new cat, so I videoed the cat chasing the laser pointer. So I'm going to torture you with this video for just a little bit here. Notice that I have this section to play the video. If I click on play, it plays. Now for some of you, it's like, well, so why are you bothering to tell me that? Well, in Lightroom 3, when you double-click to play a video, it had to launch your default media player, QuickTime, Windows Media Player, etc. So now it's integrated into Lightroom. Now let's say that I want to shorten this video. 31 seconds is too long to torture my family with, so I want to get it down to a shorter video. I'm going to click on the little wheel here, and with the frame selector tool, this circle, I'm going to decide where I want the video to end. So I'll end it right there. Then I'm going to click and drag this handle on the right to say I want to trim off the end. I'll take the frame selector, decide where I want the video to start, take the handle on the left, trim off the beginning. Now, just like with a photograph, any trimming you do with a video, any developing you do with a video does not touch your original video file sitting in your folder on your hard drive. It's just a set of instructions, and it only gets applied when you export copies of your videos. So it only gets applied to the copies. So have no fear of ruining your original video by fooling around in here. You can't actually trim out of the center of a video. I would love to see that, but it's just not here in the Lightroom 4 beta. Now, the next thing you can do is create still photographs, create JPEGs from frames in your video. You take the frame selector, decide which frame you wanted the JPEG of, click on this square, and say Capture Frame. Now I have in my film strip here, I've got both the video and I've got the JPEG. So we can turn our video cameras back into still photography cameras. Now it's kind of confusing to you, well, which one's the video? Well, when I have the JPEG selected, I don't see a play button. Plus I have these little indicator on here saying that it's a movie. So we'll go back to the movie. The other thing you can do is change the thumbnail frame. That's called the poster frame. So when you're looking at it in grid view or loop view in Lightroom, or when you export a copy, if you want a particular frame to show on the thumbnail, you're going to select that frame again with the frame selector tool, click on the square and say Set Poster Frame, and if you may or may not have seen it change here. Questions before I go into developing the video?
No questions for you at this time, Laura.
All right, so developing the video. First, all of your developed changes are going to affect every single frame. You can't isolate particular frames. So it works well with this video because it was shot from one location. The lighting conditions are exactly the same. What I would do is just choose a representative frame. Where you're going to develop your video is with the Quick Develop panel here. If you try to go into the Develop module, it's going to say Video is not supported. So you have the Quick Develop panel, but this is another panel that often starts out with things collapsed here. So always look for these sideways triangles, expand them to see what you really have control over. So I can change the white balance. Actually, I don't need to do that. Just warm it up a little bit, brighten it up a little with exposure. I'm going to bring the whites down. I don't have highlights and shadows in here, but I can dampen down the highlights with whites a little bit and maybe take a little bit of color out of the rug. So I've done my develop work. I can also apply presets from the Develop module. I'm going to go ahead and apply one just to show you a message here. So antique grayscale. Not all of the develop settings are supported for video. So of course you have a lot more controls in the Develop module, but they're not all supported for video. But what's kind of interesting for those of you that really want to experiment, do sophisticated development of videos, there's more in this list than what's in the Quick Develop panel. To get to some of these things, the tone curve, split toning, process version, calibration, if you're interested in those, what you need to do is take a JPEG of a representative frame, capture a JPEG, take it into the Develop module, develop it, create a preset, and then it'll show up here and you'll be able to apply that to your videos. Now if you didn't get that, I mean, for me that's beyond what I need to do, but just know that it's an option. Okay, I think I just reset all the develop settings, but that's fine. So I'm just doing Control or Command Z. So that's development of videos. The next thing I'm going to go into is exporting videos. Any questions on that, John?
Yes, a couple questions. Sam asks, can multiple videos be sliced together? And can one video be split into 2 or more videos?
All great features we'd love to see, but no. No, I mean, it's very basic at this point. The one thing you can do, you'll see you can export the frames individually and import them into Adobe Premiere to continue to work on them. You know, I also usually get the question of, can you play music with the videos, or can I put the videos into the Slideshow module? That's kind of a hot point. The answer is no. There have been no changes to the Slideshow module. You can't embed videos. And it is in the Slideshow module that you can assign music, so that would be the only way. But Adobe certainly knows that that's a very popular request, and you know, it wasn't a high enough priority for Lightroom 4, but there's still hope for Lightroom 5 or sometime. Any other question before I get to export?
One more question from Sam. Any support for merging images from a time-lapse sequence?
Not directly, no. So it would just be the techniques that you've seen out on the web for that. If you haven't seen those techniques, I mean, you can do that with the Slideshow module, but I believe David Marks over at lightroomlab.com has a video on that.
From Bruce.
I just saw one question as I was answering that. Can you make a virtual copy of a video? Sure, good question. I always learn from questions. Never thought about that. As I said, as you're working on the video, you're creating a set of instructions, and a virtual copy is just a second set of instructions. So it makes sense that it would work. So I'll delete that. So let me go to exporting videos. You have two choices. First, you can upload them directly to Facebook or Flickr. So I can't go into published services. Published services has been around for Lightroom 3 as well. But if you know how to use that, you can now use published services to upload videos just like you would photographs to Facebook and Flickr. I think that's really cool. You're going to start seeing a lot of Facebook videos that below them say uploaded with Adobe Photoshop Lightroom 4. And the second thing, of course, you can do is export them to your hard drive and then send them off to wherever you want to send them. So I'll click on the export button. Okay, so I clicked on the export button. I want to export a video. I'm going to export to hard drive, and I have all the normal choices of where to put it and whether to rename it, just like before, but I have a video section that has more robust functionality than it used to. So I can export to DPX, which will give me individual frames I can take into Adobe Premiere, to H.264, which will give me a compressed MP4 that I can share. And that's really for me, that's what I'm always going to be choosing. And then original is just the exact original file with none of the edits or development that you've done in Lightroom. So if you just need a copy of the original file. Quality is going to set the compression and the pixel size. Now I can't exactly explain what the logic behind the pixel size is. For example, on my iPhone, even at max quality, it's reducing from 568 to 320, but the pixel dimension here. That's basically it. You can click export, and you're good to go. Last questions on video before I go on. The next thing I want to cover is integrated email exporting.
I have no questions for you at this time.
Okay, so in the export dialog here, in this drop-down, we have a few choices that we didn't have before. Now, I might as well just mention this rather than coming back to it later. Those of us on Windows 64-bit systems haven't seen this, that we could export to CD, DVD directly because the software didn't support it. It does now. So now we have everything that Mac users have and can burn photos directly to CD or DVD. We also can export to Adobe Revel, which is Adobe Carousel, which is an Adobe service to share your photographs across your devices. But what I really want to talk about is export to email. So one way to export to email is to come into the export dialog, choose that, and set all your settings. But that's not what I'm going to be doing most of the time. Let me go and get a photograph here. It's not supported for videos. I'm going to email this photo to John because it's just my favorite bright orange photo. I'm going to right-click on the photo and I'm going to say email photo. And I'm not going to, actually I'll send it to myself. I started typing Laura, but because I've done it before, I'm in Lightroom's address book, so I just hit tab. And Great Pick is the subject. And I can either send it through Outlook because I have Outlook on my computer, or I can send it through a web service. So I'm going to go ahead and say Outlook so that you can see that here's the attached file, and I could have selected 10 photos, and I would have 10 photos here. And then from the preset box, I can choose how big I want those photos to be. There are canned presets here. I can also create a new preset if I want a different size. So I'll choose large 800, and then when I hit send, it would launch a Microsoft Outlook new email that I could type in a message in. Now let me go ahead and do a web service instead. So with Gmail, I've actually got the message box here with lots of text formatting. So it's all built in, and as soon as I hit send, it's sent through Gmail. There's no more work to be done. So you can quickly get emails out. To set up something like Gmail, you're going to go to the account manager, you're going to click add to add a new account, choose the type, and then it will help you fill in all the settings that you need to fill in. Any questions before I go to changes with DNG files, raw files?
No questions at this time.
All right, so DNG is Adobe's raw file format, and a lot of people convert their Canon or their Nikon raw files into DNG. Makes the files a little bit smaller. It makes managing the information, what's called the XMP information, a little bit easier. And it's an open source format so that if Canon or Nikon goes out of business, no one wants to support, or no one can support their files because Canon won't release the information. You know that people can support Adobe's files because they've released all of the information about them. Now there's some additional advantages, or there's one additional advantage to having DNG files in the Lightroom 4 beta. It is set up in preferences. So on the PC I'll go to edit, on the Mac it would be Lightroom, and I'll go to preferences and I'll go to file handling, and in the DNG section I would say embed fast load data. What that would do as I'm copying to DNG in the import dialog is embed a preview of my photo within the DNG to be used by the develop module. Everyone's experience, when you go to the develop module and you click on a photo, you wait while it says loading. By embedding fast load data, you get a significantly faster loading. Now for some people in the beta group, the experience has been incredible, you know, it's lightning fast, I've heard. And for others like me, well, I don't see a big difference. But it's still worth it to me to do. It makes the file a little bit bigger, and I'm going to show you in a little while some file size comparisons. Makes it a little bigger, but it's still smaller than my Canon files. So this setting is for new photos that you import. If you want to convert or add those previews to your existing DNGs, you're going to select them, and then you're going to go to Metadata, Update DNG Preview and Metadata. So that's the first change. The second two changes have to do with copies of your DNGs that you export. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a DNG file. Actually, I could export a Canon RAW file or a DNG, but the point is that the result I want out of the export dialog is a DNG file. So I'm going to click on Export. Can't send them to email, I'll send them to my hard drives. And I'm going to come down to the file settings and change the format to DNG. And as long as I choose Camera Raw 6.6 and later, meaning I don't need to send it to somebody else who doesn't have 6.6, I have some additional choices. First, I can embed fast load data. May or may not be important for copies that you're creating. But I have a lossy compression choice here. Now that may have some of you just shuddering. You know, the idea is our raw files are sacrosanct. They're, you know, the best quality files. Why would we want to compress them? Those of you that don't know what compression is, it basically makes your files smaller, you know, in megabytes. I have an article out on my blog on compression. I talk about JPEG compression, but it explains the concept of compression. But by using lossy compression, I can cut the file size from my experiments on my files. I can cut it in half. And I don't see any visible deterioration in quality until I zoom in to at least 200%. Now, am I going to use lossy compression for my DNGs of my favorite photos that I'm going to want to print and print large? No, because I still want to preserve the utmost in quality. But if you're archiving outtakes, or these DNGs are for individual frames in a time-lapse video where they're only going to show on a monitor for a second, it's a great way to reduce file size. The second thing you have if you use lossy compression is resize to fit. So you can actually make smaller files in terms of pixels, smaller DNG files in terms of pixels. So I could make a 400 by 600 pixel RAW file. Some of the processing has been done when you use lossy compression and image sizing, but you still have almost all the advantages of the RAW file when it comes to development. So if you need to share a raw file with somebody and share your adjustments, but they don't need the full-size version, this would be a great way to do that. Or again, if it's just one frame in a time-lapse video that's going to be displayed no bigger than 1024 by 768, why save your 4,000 pixel wide DNG for that? It's in this dialog because it's exported copies. But I could see for those outtakes or those snapshots, exporting copies, sorry, I'm going to go back in here, and adding the copies to the catalog and then getting rid of the originals. But before you do that, I would really suggest, of course, backing up the originals on another hard drive. Any questions on DNG?
I have a question from Peter. How is a lossy DNG indicated as different from a normal DNG?
Great question, because I was going to forget to cover that. Okay, I have a regular, let me go to, which one is which here? Here's my lossy DNG. I re-imported some of these copies that I worked on. So in the metadata panel, we have various views. We have a DNG view, and it shows us what kind of DNG it is. So this one has the fast load data, it's been compressed, and it's still full size. If I go to another one I've got here, this one, it's been compressed, and it's no longer full size. So you have that information in the metadata panel. You also can filter on it. So if I go up to, let's see, I need to be in grid view to use the library filter. If I go up to metadata, in the drop down here, I have file type. And let me go ahead and collapse these panels here so you can see this a little bit better. There. So I can filter on the various types of DNGs. I also have these options in Smart Collections. Any other questions on that?
Brad asks if you've already converted a CR2 to DNG in Lightroom 3, will the updating to process version 2012 work? I tried it on one file. It didn't seem to have quite as good dynamic range.
This question really is not a DNG question. This is an upgrading from process version 2010 to 2012 question. I'm going to address this right now unless there are other DNG questions.
I have no other
because it is an
DNG
important
questions
question to address. Okay, if another one comes in the next moment, I can hop back to it. But let me go to the develop module and let me see what's, I'm trying to find a photo. Okay, we'll take a photo that's been worked in 2010. And actually, I think I have a snapshot where this was worked in 2010. So I worked it in 2010, and I hit the exclamation point to update it. The first thing I have to say is based on, I mean, Brad has seen it himself, that when you update something you've worked on, the translation from 2010 to 2012 sometimes is great and sometimes is really bad. It was very hard for them to translate the old sliders into the new sliders. So because of that, I don't recommend that you say update all. I recommend that you update one at a time as you need to update, and then if you don't like it, then you can continue to work on the photo or go back to 2010. So my recommendation is very different from when we went to Lightroom 2 to Lightroom 3, where it was just subtle sharpening and noise reduction. I said most of us are just going to want to update all. So you'll update one at a time. Okay, so I updated it, and that was what happened. The translation from 2010 to 2012 was not good at all. So from here I would work it in 2012. If I wanted to get back to 2010, of course if I just did it I could go back in history, but anytime you want to switch between process versions, you can come down to the camera calibration panel and change the process here. 2010 is Lightroom 3, 2012 is Lightroom 4. I'm not sure if I was on soft proofing or why that happened, but sometimes it's best, yeah, I must have just been on soft proofing and not noticed it. Any other questions on that?
I have no questions for you, Laura.
So I've covered the big changes. The ones I haven't covered, Adobe calls them JDIs. JDI stands for just do it, meaning it doesn't take them a lot of work to do them, so they add them on. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these if there's an interest in it. Just raise your hand if you plan to stick around to hear the JDIs. And go ahead, John. Question.
When is Lightroom 4 due out? Final.
I have no idea.
Do you have?
But I want to know as much as you do because I have a lot of work to do to get that DVD done.
Steve says that yesterday they hinted at sometime in March, I believe, for the release he's referring to. Are you planning to create Delta training DVD for Lightroom 3 to Lightroom 4 or a new Lightroom 4 DVD for all topics?
You know, I haven't really sorted that out. If I just do a Lightroom 4 version, then those that have purchased my Lightroom 3 version, I'll have an upgrade discount for you, because certainly a fair amount of that you won't need brand new training on. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for all the questions and your participation. Have a great night and enjoy the beta or Lightroom 4 when it comes out.